Now, in my last video, I answered a question that's been top of mind for many Americans regarding Zohran Mamdani. Can his naturalization as a U.S. citizen be revoked? Yes, there are many grounds, and in the last video, I discussed the evidence that he's advocated the doctrines of world communism and is a member of an organization that advocates the doctrines of world communism, all of which makes him ineligible for naturalization. I also want to emphasize here, regardless of whether the organization calls itself communist or not, or whether they call the doctrines they advocate communist or not, it's not about labels. They can label themselves socialists all they want, but if what they advocate is in substance communist, they leave themselves wide open for denaturalization. U.S. immigration laws spell it out clearly. Starting in 1952, the U.S. immigration laws were clarified to emphasize that communist doctrines are incompatible with American values. People fleeing communist nations understand this. America is the bedrock of freedom, and that includes defining our own destinies through hard work and innovation. We work hard so that we can keep the fruits of our labor. In communist nations, in contrast, the government seizes the means of production and abolishes private property, which is the fruit of their labors. Let's think about that. Seizing the means of production is intended to destroy incentive, and when that happens, it's not America, according to the U.S. immigration laws. Black Friday is coming up, for example. It's a joyful time in America, so joyful, in fact, that retailers have turned the calendar into Black Friday for 2 whole months because Americans love shopping. Now, we love to enjoy the fruits of our labors, in other words. In communist nations, in contrast, private property is abolished and all property is regarded as being, quote-unquote, owned in common. And the government decides what rations you're entitled to. So in a communist nation, it doesn't matter how hard you work, how innovative or creative you are, how smart you are. It doesn't matter. Everyone is just entitled to the same thing. And when that's the policy, the smart people flee and the hard workers are disincentivized. So they don't work so hard. And the pot of money allegedly owned in common shrinks. And people have talked about the tax base fleeing New York City if Mamdani is elected. It's the same principle. Let's look at the doctrines of world communism. The U.S. immigration statute discusses the economic, international, and governmental doctrines of world communism because they're interconnected. Now, we can look around at our world and recognize the interconnections. Under the U.S. immigration laws, and I quote, the term world communism means a revolutionary movement, the purpose of which is to establish, eventually, a communist totalitarian dictatorship in any or all the countries of the world, through the medium of an internationally coordinated communist political movement, unquote. In my last video, I showed Mamdani speaking about the end goals of BDS and seizing the means of production. End goals. He stated that people may not be ready yet for the revolution, so they want to ease people into it. Now, again, he's betting that Americans are complacent and eventually will just get used to learned helplessness. Now, which shows us the psychological place he's coming from, learned helplessness. There's a hard lesson here from Mamdani because learned helplessness is not what he found in Uganda, for example. His family are South Asians from the Indian subcontinent who immigrated to Uganda, which kicked them out because they're gentrifiers, okay? They were gentrifying Uganda and the Ugandans weren't having it. So the Mamdanis were kicked out. So if he and his family are denaturalized for violating the U.S. immigration laws, because they do advocate the doctrines of world communism, what they're doing violates the terms of their naturalization as spelled out in the U.S. immigration laws. I guess the next step for them could be Russia. Maybe Russia is their destiny since it's the birthplace of world communism. The Mamdanis could move there and just become the oligarchs that they are. Just be what they are. The U.S. House of Representatives has already made a referral to the DOJ to investigate Mamdani's application for naturalization on the basis of willful misrepresentation or concealment of material support for terrorism. So this is yet another ground on which his naturalization could be revoked. Mamdani, before he became a New York State Assemblyman, in which he missed 80% of the votes, by the way, before that he used to be a rapper on YouTube. Now, one of his rap songs expressed support for the Holy Land Five, whom he called my guys. Now, they were convicted in 2008 of providing material support to Hamas, which is designated by the U.S. as a foreign terrorist organization. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas committed the worst massacre of Jewish people in history, aside from the Holocaust. And what about the massacre of Americans by jihadis on 9/11? Now, 3,000 Americans were slaughtered by Osama bin Laden, and I remain baffled at the left-wing 9/11 deniers who fault George W. Bush for waging war against the global jihad. But there's no reasoning with fanatics. Mamdani doesn't get it, for example. He made a statement recently on the campaign trail boo-hooing about Islamophobia because his aunt was afraid to ride the subways after 9/11. Not one word about the 3,000 Americans who were slaughtered. And that really says it all. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.